Here we are, Go Math Lesson 2-3. Today we're talking about multiplying fractions. So we've been comparing fractions and we've been converting fractions into a decimal. So now we want to talk about multiplying fractions, right? So if I took something like 1/4 and I want to multiply it to 1/8, right? 1/4 by 1/8, and I'm going to multiply them together. The easiest thing to do when multiplying fractions is to realize you're going to do multiplying, numerator with numerator, denominator with denominator. So you just multiply straight across, and that makes this lesson particularly easy, because really what this problem boils down to is 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 8 is 32, 1/32. Now, you might say, okay, but I'm multiplying 4 by 8 and I'm getting a smaller number, because 1/32 is certainly much smaller than 1/4 or 1/8. What you need to understand is that when you are taking a fraction and you are multiplying it into it or by another fraction, you're going to get a smaller number, right? Same thing with a decimal multiplied by a decimal, you're going to get an even smaller decimal. So the important thing to remember is to multiply straight across. So let's show you one more here. So if I had something like 2/3 times, let's do 6/8. 2/3 times 6/8. I would multiply straight across and I would get 12/24. This is 12/24. That is a very interesting answer because I know they're both even. Should I simplify those? And the answer is yes. As far as I'm concerned, anytime you can simplify, you should simplify. I would simplify this by dividing them both by 2, and I could get 6/12 and keep going from there, or realize that the greatest common factor of 12 and 24 is 12 itself, and then I end up with 1/2. So 2/3 times 6/8 is 12/24, which simplifies to 1/2. But there's a shortcut here, and I want to make sure that I show it to you. If I back this up, and I'm not going to erase this so we can see them side by side, but if I took 2/3 and I multiplied that by 6/8, if I look this way, can I simplify? No, I can't simplify 2 and 3. They don't have any common factors. If I look this way, I could simplify 6 and 8 because they're both divisible by 2. So I can either simplify up and down and just know that 6/8 can be simplified as a fraction, or I can simplify diagonally. And this is important too, because I can look this way and I can look this way. And I could say, all right, 2 and 8, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Really what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by 2 and then divide by 2, right? Because I'm going to multiply this over and then simplify it. So I can cut that out right away. Looking for common factors this way, 3 and 6. Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And I might say, okay, so you simplified by 2, and then you simplified by 3. I can simplify again with 2 and 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. And what I'm left with is 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. When you think back to how we just did that problem, I simplified by 2, I simplified by 3, and I simplified by 2. 2 times 3 times 2 is 12. What did I simplify by up here? 12. So you can cut out a little bit of work. I like to simplify and then multiply. It makes things a little easier. Some students like to multiply then simplify. What does this look like in your book? Well, Sasha still has 4/5 of a scarf left to knit. If she finishes half of the remaining part of the scarf today, how much of the scarf will Sasha knit today? Well, you never really think about this, but if I have a portion of something and then I have another portion of it, right? There's half a cake left, and Mr. W goes and eats 1/3 of the cake that's there. Well, I ate 1/6 of an entire cake. Oh, so that does have some application in the real world, if you like cake, like me. Here we go. So we have 4/5 of a scarf, and she finishes half of it. We're taking 1/2 times 4/5. Again, do you multiply then simplify, or simplify then multiply? Let's do them both. I'm going to multiply then simplify. Multiply straight across. Anytime you're dealing with fractions in multiplication, you multiply straight across. Numerator times the numerator, 1 times 4 is 4. Denominator times denominator, 2 times 5 is 10. And I realize that 4 and 10 are both divisible by 2. Whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. I divide both of them by 2, and I get 2/5. Can I save myself this step? Yep, I can by doing it back here. If I have 1/2 times 4/5, I can't simplify 1 and 2. I can't simplify 4 and 5. But I can simplify 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now I get 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 5 is 5. I still end up with 2/5. I'm not concerned if you multiply then simplify, or simplify then multiply. If you don't like to do this simplification of the problem, then don't. For me, it just saves me from dealing with bigger numbers. So I particularly like it. But it doesn't matter to me if you're multiplying and simplifying, or simplifying and multiplying, as long as you get the correct answer in the simplest form. So, anytime you're multiplying with fractions, you're taking a part and multiplying it by another part, you just multiply straight across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. If you can simplify your answer, you really, really should.